Brandon with goHUNT, here to talk about application strategy for the state of New Mexico. Great state to be applying for. We get a lot of questions about it. This is going to be a video that we go over those common questions. We're not going to dive into great detail. Going to be more of just an overview of the state. We dive into huge detail in our insider platform. Right now we're running a promo code DO50, get you 50 points into the gear shop. If you're not an insider, you definitely should be, especially if you're interested in applying in the West. But back to New Mexico. The first question that we always get around any state is, how do I apply? You know, is it hard? Is it difficult? A lot of people have a misconception that applying for a Western state is difficult. They have a draw process. They've got, you've got to apply in a certain time period. New Mexico is a great state. You log into their website, you create an account, or if you're an existing user, you just log into your account. They walk you through the steps, allows you to apply. There is some nuances. You do need to do a little bit of research ahead of time to know what you're applying for, what you want to get out of the state, and that's where the insider platform really shines. There's incredible value there. Allows you to filter, use draw odds, find hunts that you can apply with, and just find all the answers that you have. So to jump in a little bit in their draw system, New Mexico is what we call a random state. There's not a bonus or preference point attached in New Mexico, which is great if you're just getting into Western hunting. There's no one ahead of you that has an advantage. There's nobody at a max point pool that's going to take a permit that would otherwise be yours. So if you miss a year or if you're brand new to hunting, it's a great state to jump into. With that, they allow you various choices on your application. So you get, we typically only talk about 3 of the choices. There's actually a 4th. We'll talk a little bit about that, but you get 3 choices, and there is a strategy behind which hunt you place in which choice level. You would never want to place a hunt that is super easy to draw or one that you might not want to hunt as a first choice. You want to place the hardest hunt to draw first and then stagger them to the easiest hunt. What that does is when they pull your application, they literally go down that line. They look at your first hunt. If it's available, you draw it. If it's not, they go to your second choice. If it's available, you draw it. If not, they go to your third choice. If your third choice is not available, they go to the next application. So a little bit of strategy. And again, we dive into that strategy in depth in the insider platform. Like I mentioned, there is a 4th choice on your application. We recommend you don't use it. What the 4th choice is it is for leftover permits. It doesn't even have to be a leftover permit that you applied for. What you're saying if you put a 4th choice is that you are agreeing to take the permit that is available. It may be, an antlerless permit. It may be, a permit that is typically, covered by private land in that region of the state you've applied for. So it's a choice that I've never used. Again, we don't recommend using the 4th choice, but it is available if you so choose to use it. Next question we get is, around the cost of applying in New Mexico. With that, do I have to have a hunting license to apply in the state of New Mexico? And you do. Something new that they introduced a few years ago, you do have to purchase that hunting license. It's not terribly expensive. I want to say it's around that $65 mark for a non-resident, even less expensive for a resident. So, not going to break the bank on that, but you do have to have that to apply in the state of New Mexico. Where they get you on the cost is New Mexico is a state that you have to front the cost of the license. And that can get rather expensive if you're applying for multiple species. New Mexico has a ton of species that you can apply for. Not just your typical, deer, elk, antelope. You're starting to throw in oryx, ibex, aoudad. There's a ton of species that you can apply for, and some of those species are really expensive. And so just take note as you go through your application strategy. And we actually talk about this in depth in our actual article in the insider platform, but you can rack up a bill with the state of New Mexico real quick. A lot of us have dedicated credit cards that we just use in the state of New Mexico because they do hang on to the money for a little bit. New Mexico is a state that once the draw happens, they process the refunds fairly quickly. Considering, most other states. So what all of this in a nutshell is if you're going to apply for elk, you have to pay the cost of that elk permit, whether you draw it or not. You're fronting the cost of that. and then if you don't draw it, the state of New Mexico refunds that. And so just know going in that it can get expensive if you're applying for multiple species in New Mexico. And how they allocate those permits is a little bit different than most other Western states. So New Mexico has 3 different draws that people can apply in. If you're a resident of New Mexico, you can apply underneath the resident pool, or they have a guided pool. That guided pool can also be applied for as a non-resident. What that is if you've contracted with an outfitter in the state of New Mexico, you go in underneath his application and you go into the guided pool. And then as a non-resident, you can apply as a non-resident. So those are the 3 pools that you can draw a permit from: the resident, the guided, and the non-resident. And they allocate permits, a percentage of permits based on those pools. Residents get 84%, at least 84% of the permits. The non-residents get up to 6% of permits, and the guided get up to 10% of the permits. So, you know, a lot of cases, if you are willing to go guided, that's something you're already looking into. I would get with an outfitter, get a contract in place, go into that guided pool. There's more permits available in that pool for the most part. Your draw odds typically are a little bit better. And so that's kind of a little unique thing to the state of New Mexico. And the other thing is they classify various hunts based on quality or demand. So you'll notice as you go to apply, there is standard, there's quality, there's high demand. What those are is there's a different price point for those. So your high demand, your quality hunts are going to be a little bit more expensive than your standard hunts. And again, we dive into that on the state profile, species profile, and the insider platform. We break out all those costs and allow you to compare and see what's best for you. The other aspect that we get a lot of questions about, or we talk about a lot, are the youth hunts in the state of New Mexico. It's actually a state that caters to youth quite well, in my opinion. They dedicate seasons just to youth hunters. Draw odds have typically in the past, you know, talking 5-10 years ago, those youth seasons were great odds. You know, if you had a young hunter that was interested in hunting, you could draw those permits fairly regularly. With the increased popularity in hunting and more people getting afield, those odds have diminished a little bit, but it's still a great opportunity. Typically, the seasons that are set aside for youth are the best dates. They're rut dates. They're the prime time to be in the field, which I'm grateful for. The youth, that's a generation that we should cater to, in my opinion. So New Mexico does a great job at that, setting aside seasons and permits just for youth hunters. So if you've got some young up and coming hunters, you should be looking at those, taking advantage of those. We call those out. We do dedicated articles for those in the insider platform. So if you're not an insider, you should be, and you can research those opportunities as well. Another question that we get in New Mexico is whether you can apply as a party. You definitely can. Most states across the West allow you to apply in party, but just know going into the draw that, you know, with the set aside quotas or permit percentages, as a non-resident, you know, you may be looking at a hunt that is only offering 1 permit. If you go into it as a party, they're going to pass you by because there aren't enough permits for your party. There is some advantages, you know, if you're the type of guy that only wants to hunt with your buddy, you know, you want to have 2 tags, definitely look for hunts that have the available tags and you can go into it as a party. Great way to apply in any Western state, but just know, you know, some of the caveats of going into an application with a party. Again, we dive into that detail in great detail in the insider platform. So that's New Mexico. We didn't dive into incredible detail in these. We do that again in our insider platform. If you're not an insider, you definitely should be. Right now we've got a promo code going, DO50. It gives you 50 points into the gear shop. So go ahead, jump over there, sign up, get you some points in the gear shop.